Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Stock Market Today. My name is Ken Shreve, joined again by our news editor, Ed Carson. On today's show, we'll go over another volatile day in the market. Looked like we were going to go almost back to break even for the S&P 500 during the final hour of trading, but another whoosh of selling knocked indexes lower by the close. But before we talk about the market, let me throw it over to Ed because he's always got his eye on stocks to watch. Ed, what are we going to look at today? Ed is muted.
Well, who knows? It's the first time for anything being quiet. We want to take a look at some stocks that are starting to buckle, stocks that have been resilient, and that includes Shockwave and ENPH that are really starting to come under pressure today. Meanwhile, Eli Lilly and some drug makers are starting to come back up.
Yeah, I was noticing a lot of healthcare stocks, drug makers leading the Dow Jones today, also the S&P 500. But let's start by taking a look at the Nasdaq 100 here as measured by the Qs, the Invesco QQ Trust. You can see that ended with a loss of about 1.2%. It did try to close off lows. It did just a little bit, but these June lows still look like they're in play here, Ed.
Yeah, absolutely. We're getting closer and closer to the 50-day line. It's hard to see that anymore. It's hard to believe that just a little over a week ago we were trading around there. Yeah, we're heading down there. Treasury yields skyrocketed, so you saw a lot of growth names, small caps, really hard hit. And this is just something that investors have to be watching for. We are in a serious downtrend. We are in a market correction, a broader bear market. This is just not a good time to be playing this, and we're going to get a bounce. We're going to get a bounce at some point. I just think that, and some of the names we're going to look at today are among those that are probably going to bounce really well. I just think that investors should be very cautious in this environment and wait for some real strength, because this is not a good situation right now.
No question about it. Taking a look at the S&P 500 here, down about 0.9 on the day. The Dow Jones Industrial average also had a tough day, closed near its session low. Charts are a little bit slow today, but you can see the DIA down about 0.4%. We can't forget about small caps because they really got crushed today. It was the lagging index today, Ed, with the Russell 2000 down more than almost 2%, 1.9% decline.
Yeah, really heavy losses there.
Okay, well, let's take a look at this 10-year Treasury yield, because I'll tell you what, even when indexes started to pair losses late in the day, I just checked on that 10-year Treasury yield, and it was just not going down. You'd think that maybe the market was rallying because bond yields were falling, but this 10-year yield at last check up about 19 basis points. Is that right, Ed?
Something like that, 19, 20 basis points, just really relentless. There's just nothing. Yeah, there's a tiny decline yesterday. I mean, ultimately, just completely soaring, like 7 or 8 weeks in a row now of us going up. Yeah, I mean, maybe we'll pause here. I mean, at some point, we're at 11-year highs, but the underlying trend, Fed is aggressively raising rates. It's going to continue to doing so. And maybe the only thing that's going to stop yields rising, especially these long-term rates, is the economy going into a clear recession. So it's not like the solution to Treasury yields coming down is like, oh, now everything's great. It's just there aren't a lot of good solutions in the near term for the market.
Yeah, it's a stock market that is challenged on many different fronts, and there's always uncertainty in the stock market, but sometimes that wall of worry, sometimes it can be a 3-foot wall, sometimes it can be a 10-foot wall, and sometimes it can be a skyscraper, which it seems to be right now. But we mentioned that 10-year yield up 19 basis points, 3.7%. Ed said that's an 11-year high, I think the highest level since early 2011. So pretty interesting there. All right, well, let's take a look at some individual stocks here. I think one of the main differences in today's selling was that we finally started to see some real true market leaders start to buckle. Are they completely broken stocks? No, but let's start by taking a look at ENPH, one of the leading stocks in the Solar group here, and we'll switch from the monthly chart to the daily chart, and then we'll eventually switch to the weekly here. But here's a look at ENPH. What do you see here, Ed?
Yeah, I mean, this one, it's coming down to where you'd sort of like it to come down to. It was just pretty sharply coming down to the 50-day line, the 10-week line, really for the first time in this run. So that could all be normal. The problem is if you just bought it the last couple of days, that would be a real issue, and you just don't know. When we talk about these final holdouts, these are the last holdouts. There's a lot of other stocks that had broken down or really faltered over the last few weeks, and so you're talking about the last ones to be doing it. That can often happen when a market just comes under unrelenting pressure. At some point, even the last holdouts go. Now, maybe this is where we find support, but honestly, you're going to need the market to probably show some signs of life to see these names hold up. And just to watch it, this is still one to watch. The RS line is near a high. This is normal to come down to the 50-day line. It's just that this is one to watch. Maybe it gets a lot worse. Maybe this is where it holds.
You see a beautiful breakout here from a lengthy consolidation for ENPH right in this area here. And when a leading stock breaks out powerfully and does well, as ENPH did when it crossed the 300 level, it's very common to come back and test this 50-day line. And the question now is, will big investors come in and offer support for this leading stock in the solar sector? All right, so that's ENPH. Shockwave, which is has been another big market leader, has a very similar looking chart here, Ed.
Yeah, and this one showed maybe a little more damage just because it went through the low of its consolidation. And I think it had been trading really tightly. And in fact, you could have made an argument, I would not have done it because it was such a bad market. But yesterday afternoon, right after when the market was rallying at its peak, you could have made an argument for an aggressive buy or an add-on entry right at the top. And that's where another thing that's scary. And so when we get those bounces, you're going to see stocks that flash buy signals here and there. But I mean, look, the market is way too weak to really justify that. But there was probably people thinking that coming right up to that level. But now look at where it is. It's down more than 10% from that level, like 12, 13% from that level. Again, this is sort of normal. This one might set up just fine. I'm not saying it's broken, but it's coming down hard now. And that's just something that investors have to be aware of. As strong as these stocks can be, when they do buckle, they really can come down fast.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So ENPH and Shockwave, very similar looking charts here. And then let's finally take a look at a stock that bucked the trend today. We mentioned some of the big gainers in the Dow today: Merck, Johnson & Johnson, Amgen in the healthcare space, S&P 500, Bristol Myers Squibb was up there. But let's take a look at Eli Lilly, which had some good drug news today, and a stock with a very, very strong pipeline here too, Ed.
Yeah, Eli Lilly, a couple of pieces of good news. There was a cancer drug, I think a lung cancer drug that can now be used for solid tumors of various types around the body. Then there was another analyst upgrade regarding its obesity drug, which has been out there for a little while. I mean, it's in clinical trials, but there's a lot of hopes for that drug. So while the growth is not, you look at their fundamentals and you go, the growth is just okay, or the earnings estimates, but there's just a lot of optimism. So big bounce today. You can see how the relative strength line, while the stock hasn't really done a whole lot the last few weeks, it actually undercut the low of its base yesterday. The RS line popped today. It's been trending higher the last few weeks. It's not actionable, but you can sort of see that trend line. You can sort of see it coming up. So it wouldn't be a surprise. I mean, it makes sense that in a tough market, that drug makers, health insurers, and some other names like that are a little bit insulated from economic woes might start showing up at least as relative strength winners.
Yeah, so the trend line that we draw here on Eli Lilly's chart, a move over this trend line is basically going to correspond with a move above the 50-day moving average. That would probably be enough to break Lilly out of its downtrend. Good news, good volume on Eli Lilly today, and definitely one of many healthcare stocks that outperformed today. All right, Ed. Well, thank you very much for your input. As always, we are in a market correction, folks, and as Jim Ropel said on our guest on IBD Live this morning, if you're trying to buy strong performing stocks in a weak market, that's an easy way to get to get cut up and be forced to cut losses. It's just an easy way to lose money. So it's best just to kind of show discipline and sit in cash here, get out of the market's way. There's still a lot of uncertainty, and the market is really trying to climb a very tall wall of worry here. So that's the situation. We're in a correction. We'll at some point we'll see a sign of strength and maybe a confirmed uptrend, but we're not there yet. So just play defense here. That'll do it for today. Ed is going to be in the host chair tomorrow for IBD Live. I'll be on the show with him and a couple of other colleagues. So looking forward to that. Ed, we'll see you tomorrow morning. And to everyone else, thanks very much for watching. And Ed and Allie will be back tomorrow to put a ribbon on the week. Thanks a lot.